Hey, old soul. Just over a year ago, I sold everything I owned in Australia and moved with my ex husband and 3 kids to this beautiful land of Bali. Now I travel first class around the world, teaching people how to manifest their dream life. If you're ready to step into a paradigm that's so wild, so freeing, so abundant, then you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome. Hello and welcome, guys, to another very, very exciting episode of the Vibration of Wealth podcast. I am so freaking excited today because we have a very, very special guest with us. It is Marisa Lonic, who is a keynote speaker, a life and business coach, a 3 times author, top-rated podcast host, and the founder of Mama Work It. She helps busy women juggling mum life, work life, wife life, fill in the blank life, go from overwhelmed to empowered. When she's not helping mums slay the day, you can find her cooking, running, okay, fine, walking, running, hanging out with 5 amazing guys she calls family. And as a mum myself of 3, this is going to be such an epic chat and I cannot wait to dive in. So welcome, 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 Marisa. Cannot wait to see the realms of what we explore today and the magic that unfolds over the next 30 minutes.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me and for that warm welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, yes. I'm so excited to have you here and just really see what channels through for our incredible listeners today. So tell us a little bit about you. And of course, it's 11:11 here. Anyone listening that is needing some guidance and alignment. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this line of work, because I feel like a lot of women that I get to interview, we weren't given this blueprint at birth. We weren't told that, hey, you can be an author and you can be a business and life coach and help people do these things. It's not really in the traditional list of jobs that we get given. So talk us through a little bit how you found yourself in this inspiring line of work.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would like to say it started when I actually entered into motherhood, and it was a personal journey. For me, I gave birth to premature twins. That was my first go at being a mom. And so I like to plan. I'm kind of type A, and this just really threw me off my rocker. They showed up early to the party, 2 of them at once. It was just baptism by fire. And so the first couple years, even though I think outside looking in, it looked like I had it all together, I internally felt like the hot mess express. I did not feel aligned. I am an ambitious woman, as I know many of your listeners are as well. I wanted to grow in my career, but I also didn't want to sacrifice motherhood and being with my babies. And I was just at a crossroads. And so what happened, of course, I got offered a job promotion at the time, and that job promotion would mean moving my family cross country. I live in the US and I'm a New Yorker, and that would mean moving to the other coast to California, taking on a new role, more responsibility, longer commute, all the things I didn't feel I could handle or that I even had time for, because I already felt like I had zero time then. And what did I do? I turned down the opportunity. I was immediately plagued with regret for an entire weekend, just felt totally out of sorts, misaligned, out of tune with that decision, and talked with my husband about it. And he said, well, what if we just tried it? And we just did it. Nothing's permanent. Let's just try it out. So Monday morning, I'm frantically emailing my boss, asking if the position is still available. It was. Ended up moving my family, ended up in this new role, was growing in my career, and had to figure out some new and different systems on how to maximize my time and my energy. And I did. And I felt really called during that time to support the working mother. I felt like there were a lot of resources out there for women, for moms in general, but for someone who was traditionally working outside the home and juggling all these things, it felt like there were limited options. And so I started blogging, and Then I wrote my first book, and then I published my first course. And I did all this as a side hustle while working in the corporate world. And I was adding to my family and, doing all these things and everything was really good and felt really good for me until it didn't. And we
Mm.
all know what that misalignment feels like. It feels like even the simplest day to day tasks feel hard. They feel like you're climbing a mountain when you should feel like you're taking a step even downhill sometimes. Like it just felt really off. And that's when I decided to leave the corporate space and move into my business full time. Got certified as an intuitive coach, really leaned more into the subconscious. And so I really mend the subconscious, the intuitive work with the really quote unquote rigidity of time management and productivity and organizational stuff like that. And I think it's a world that really does belong together.
Mm. I love all of that so much. And I love these key moments on your journey where you felt misaligned and it was really obvious. And the fact that your husband supported you in that move is massive. Like it really
Yes.
is such a big part of the journey to have the masculine energy supporting us when we're making those huge decisions in life and having that level of support to be able to move because they really, really are the structure. So I'm curious, and this is an interesting question that I feel like is so important because there's so many moms out there listening to this, whether they're single moms or they're in solid relationships. How does your relationship work with your partner when you have all these little people, you're running a career, you're doing all these things, and time is kind of the factor that we always need to make more of and be able to bend time so it feels like it's standing still. I'm curious how you make that dynamic work with your husband and how he's able to support you, so solidly and strongly in the masculine energy with all of this, because it does make a big difference. And then also, if you don't have a husband and you're listening to this, what would be your advice to holding yourself and supporting yourself in this? Or is it, seeking out community? So I'm curious to hear all of that because I feel like it is what you've really mastered is the balance of so many different dynamics. And it is so important for our listeners to understand how they can have that in their life because we all need support.
Yes. Yes. And although those situations are quite different, if you do have a partner that's with you and supporting you day in and day out, in the same environment, or you don't, there are some similarities I think that can help you in both situations. And first and foremost is, just really getting clear, getting super crystal clear clarity on what it is that you want to achieve, that you need to achieve, that needs to be done, and getting that out of your head and onto some sort of third party, whether that is a pen to paper, whether that is a spreadsheet, a notes app on your phone. It really, to me, doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter to anyone listening. It's really whatever works for you. But the thing is, we have so much that we're thinking about, especially as creatives, especially if you are a mom juggling all the roles that you have, even if you're not a parent. We all wear many hats on a day to day basis. And what happens is all of these things just get jumbled up in our mental load and they start kind of creating hoarder status in there, right? They're like all these things jumbled up in a little studio apartment and they're disorganized. There's clutter and there's nowhere for you to really process and get clear on what needs to be done and when and the organization of it all. So that would be a first step is just kind of brain dumping, getting everything out of there. That's really, really crucial and important because without that, you won't be able to prioritize effectively. The other element of this is communication. As much as we would love to say that people can read our minds, they can't. Even our partners of many, many years that we think know us inside out, they just can't. They can't. So we have to be really clear on what it is that we need, not just vague instructions, not just side eye glares, not just whatever that is. We have to be really clear. And there are ways that you can do this that don't come out as sassy or salty or resentful. You can do this in a way that's really polite and communicative and in sync, and there's a what's in it for you and all those elements that can really help these requests and these needs go a long way. So whether that's communication to your partner, whether that's communication to your village, you know, that expression, it takes a village, it didn't come from nowhere. I mean, it's meant to be. We need support systems in our lives.
Mm.
The other thing I'll just say is there's a lot of, I'm sure you see this just in you're a mom of three and just on social in society. There's this element out there of, you know, super moms and moms do it all. And, you know, I don't know about you, Eva, but like here in the US, they're not handing out cash prizes for moms who do it all, you know? So there has to be, you know, a detach from those societal norms, quote unquote, that have been created that allows moms to feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident, a little more just in okay in general, receiving support from others. And sometimes it's that issue, and sometimes it's an issue of, I can do it better. And we
Yeah.
have to let go of that because we all have a zone of genius. You have a zone of genius. I have a zone of genius. All your listeners have a zone of genius, but we get caught up in the zone of excellence. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap. He
Yes.
talks a lot about this.
Yeah.
And the zone of excellence are the areas that you've mastered that you can do really well, probably better than a lot of other people, but you don't necessarily shine and love and find joy in those areas, but you
Mm.
do them because you're good at them. Those
Yeah.
are not the areas you want to spend a lot of your time in. You want to be more in your zone of genius. I've heard you talk about this before as a projector. I'm a projector myself, so I really can understand in your videos too when you speak about these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much because it is so important. And I'm so good at outsourcing. Like I'm lazy. I hate doing lots of things. Like I think the hardest thing for me is being a mom and I love it. Like I really love it. But I almost have to outsource the components of motherhood that I don't enjoy by explaining it to my kids. I'm like, mummy's really tired right now, or mummy has her period right now, or mummy can't be a good mummy when you're not being a kind kid. Like, and you don't want to put that pressure on them and be like, you have to be like this all the time. But there's moments when we're not our best selves in motherhood because we're required to be on so much. And it is so important to know our energy and all of that. So I think one of the biggest takeaways I got from you just then, speaking about the communication, which is huge, and I know, like, I can feel your energy. You have a very, very beautiful, kind, soft soul. Like, you have a really, really big heart, and you're very, 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 very powerful, potent woman. But, when you kind of get into your core, you've got this really, really beautiful, soft, kind energy. And I can tell from that, the way that you speak to yourself is very, very kind and soft and loving. And that's why you have the ability to speak to, your partner and your kids in that way, because it is how we speak to ourselves. It always starts with us. We are the seed that has to be nurtured and looked after and taken care of so that we can hold all of these layers. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for that because, it's so easy to do all these things and see what we're doing on the outside, but it starts with how we speak to ourselves, how we communicate with ourselves to communicate with others in such a beautiful way. And it isn't easy. Like, I think I actually read somewhere years ago that projectors shouldn't have kids. Like, they're like, you just shouldn't have kids. And I was like, oh,
Man, I really
interesting.
broke that rule.
No, we definitely did. But I feel like, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but kids have been my biggest teacher, like absolute hands down biggest teacher. And I'd love to know what your biggest takeaways from motherhood are that you have let ripple out to the rest of your life, because obviously how we do one thing is how we do everything. So I'd love to know how you grew, as a mom, and how that's helped you in every area of your life, because no one, doesn't matter how many parenting books you read, there is not one goddamn parenting book out there that is going to prepare you for motherhood. There just isn't. It's like all the books that we have in the world. Honestly, I reckon every single book, you take the tiniest snippet, you put it into your energy, and then, none of it is relevant because we are all so unique. It's so hard to copy and paste everything to a T. So yeah, I'd love to know what your biggest takeaways were and how you use that for the rest of your life, because you've obviously had some massive, massive motherhood lessons, especially with the timing.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Well, so many. I will say I've always been a fan of improving myself, of personal development, professional development. I was, always maxing out my educational stipend and using it to go to seminars and conferences and buying all the books and all those things. And now as a certified coach, I'm always kind of still learning. But the biggest flex, I think, with becoming a mom and having kids and, lesson I'd say is humble to like really humbling myself. And when I think I know it, I don't. And they remind me of that. Um, and the constant sort of learner mindset that I need to put myself in and be in, because as soon as you master a phase, and I'll say master in quotes here because I don't know if you ever really do. I mean, sometimes people look at me and they're like, wow, 4 kids. And I'm like, no, trust me, I know nothing more than you do. I'm no expert here. But as soon as you feel like you've got it, it changes. It
Mm,
changes. Either your kids change, they're in a new season, a new behavioral adaptation, a new thing going on, a new, they're starting school or whatever it is, or you add to your family and the dynamic changes, or you get pregnant or whatever it is, right?
mm,
So it's like a moving target, and you
yeah.
just sort of have to keep being flexible and keep kind of learning the new tips and tricks to make it work. And like you said, the tips and tricks you get out of books and things like that, sometimes they're helpful, of course, but they're not necessarily exactly what you need. Like it's all your own personal learning journey.
Mm.
Um, on just a funner note, I have 4 boys, and I will tell you, like, the sport that I played in high school was cheerleading. So I'm learning a lot just with regards to, their interests and, the rules of American football and things like that. So,
Yeah, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think the most beautiful piece to this is how much you have to change to constantly keep up with their development. And, you know, life is change. That's all it is. Like it's
yes.
completely and utterly change. If you can't change, you're not going to make it in life, and you have to change whether you like it or not. Like you don't have a choice. You naturally change. Your skin cells are always dying and being regenerated. Your hair is always dying, your nails, like it's always dying and coming back new. And so change is such a huge part. And I feel like as a parent, we are forced, whether we'd like it or not, it's like we have to just surrender to the process and be okay with not knowing everything. And I think it's interesting because I don't know if you get stuck in this too, but one of my biggest like takeaways or like constant reminding myself is ever they have baby brains. They're not developed yet. Like don't,
Yes.
sometimes I
Oh
have
my
these
gosh.
moments where
Every
I'm like,
time.
why do you not understand? Or like be grateful. And I'm like, oh, like they're like seeing your parents coming through. You're like, oh my gosh, let's stop that. I don't want that to be passed down for generations and generations. But it is like
Hmm.
this constant reminder that they are undeveloped. They do sometimes act like narcissists, and they're not narcissists. They're just children because they're just in survival mode. And everyone's like, there's something wrong with my child. I'm like, no, there is nothing wrong with your child. They're just learning how to be kids, and kids are inherently selfish. Like they just desire everything when it happens, and they go from being babies that get everything on demand. They don't have to do anything but cry, and they get the whole entire world at their fingertips. And to grow out of that, it can be a little bit of a shock for their little baby brain. So it's like it takes so much as parents, and I feel like we don't acknowledge it as much as we need to, like to be the soil that is constantly fertile enough to hold their growth and hold it stably, without feeling the turbulence every time they change or getting frustrated. And it is hard. Like for me, I'm extroverted, but I'm also very introverted. And, projectors, I need to recharge alone. Sometimes it frustrates me when I've got negativity in my space. And my God, sometimes kids can be very, very negative. So it's like
Yes.
all of our triggers and our wounds are always coming up to be dealt with and healed with. And I'd be curious to know, has anything massively changed from being a parent that you take into the workforce with you, like the way that you speak to your kids or the understanding or tips and tricks that have kind of gone both ways? Because I feel like with parenting, like I never thought I'd have to give my kids consequences. I never thought like I was just so easygoing, being an empath. I'm like, yeah, you guys just like feminine energy, do whatever you want. Like, I'll just give attention to the good behavior and, not acknowledge the bad behavior. But you always need the masculine and the feminine. It's like if you don't have consequences for your children's actions, well, they're not really set up for the world, because you can't go out there and kill someone without going to jail. So it's like we have to kind of model this structure of life, whether we agree with it or not, in the home, so that our kids are grown up and they're able to go out into the real world. So I'd love to know, yeah, really what you've learned from being a mom that you've been able to transfer to work, or vice versa, back and forth.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because I think for me it was the opposite. It
Mm,
was that becoming a mom and having to slow down and not be I don't want to say not be so ambitious. I'm still very ambitious, but to realize that the pace I'm at is the exact right pace I'm meant to be at right now.
mm,
And so probably more of that feminine energy of going with the flow and being more on the receiving end, I guess, has opened up for me a lot more in motherhood. And sometimes I would resist it because that's not how I was. That's not the style I was used to. But I love it. I love it because it's really has balanced me out and
mm.
created this equilibrium that I didn't even know I needed.
I love that so much. And just kind of touching on that, because a lot of our listeners are projectors. And I want to know, did you feel like the hustle pace before was you in flow and in sync with life, or did you feel like it was more conditioning? Because I'm very aware that we have different seasons in our life that, we've got to be in rhythm with it. Sometimes we are working a little bit more, sometimes we are working a little bit less. But I know as projectors, we have so much deconditioning to do. So I'd love to know if you felt like it was conditioned, or it was just you in flow and in sync with life, and that was the rhythm for your life back then.
No, I think it was conditioning 100%.
Mm,
Yeah, I do. When I think back on it and just feeling like that was the way to get ahead and that was the only way to be successful and that was what I was always surrounded with is like hard work equals success, a lot of hours equals hard work, all of those things. So, yeah, I think 100% conditioning.
and what do you think's been the biggest change in your life from slowing down?
Oof, a lot of good changes. I would say on one hand, it's made me 1,000 times more efficient, because I can be like a productivity ninja in a shorter span of time. And
Mm,
in other ways, it has allowed me to be more present.
mm,
And I know that sounds a little cliche, but when you are very future oriented, that's a challenge to really be present, that
mm.
in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my whole life is in the future. Like, I'm just like,
Right?
I obviously I spend great deals of amounts of time just staring at the ocean or staring at trees, or, like really being here and appreciating it. But yeah, same thing. Like when I was younger, I feel like a lot of projectors go through very, very similar things, because we know that we're the guides of the world. We are the energy type that is bringing in, the new way of living, the new earth, all the things that are coming to fruition. And we naturally know that we're meant to be ahead, where we have these big dreams on our hearts and we're just meant to be there. But the model that we're given is like the dice and the playing board that we're given for this 3D reality is like, there you go, hustle hard, you'll get there. And then we try to
Yes.
play the game like the way they tell us to play the game. And then we're like, I don't know why it's not creating the results that I needed to create, or things aren't going the way that I would like them to create. And yeah, it is like being present is everything, because the only moment that actually exists is the present moment. And it doesn't mean that we can't be in the present moment and be vibrating at the future reality. It's like we're always going to be ahead of our time. That's just who we are. We're old souls. Like we'll always be ahead of the time. But yeah, I love that. And I really feel like presence is everything, because presence is really just wholeness. It's not needing anything outside of yourself. You know, our slow minds are always like, yeah, it just means that we're just being present. And it's like, it's really just accepting that you're exactly where you need to be and everything is okay. And fuck, that can be hard to hear sometimes when you're like, no, it's not okay because I need to be here, I need to be there, or this needs to be done. It's like, no, there's no conditions. You don't have to do XYZ to get that. That can just come without the conditions. You don't need to create all these random conditions for the thing to manifest. And gosh, that's a hard thing. You know, it can be okay to sit with your kids while one of them's having a tantrum and making six figures in the background. Like, that's totally a vibe. Like, you can have all of it, but it is rewriting the story. And it sounds like you did such a good job of it. And the universe gave you four incredible blessings to be able to learn, you know, so many beautiful skills and take them back to the workforce and help so many people, because you've now been given the skills of your soul, not so much the conditioning of your mind to manifest all of that with.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I am a work in progress like everyone here, but I so appreciate that. And I'm just doing my best every day.
Gosh, aren't we all? Aren't we all? Like, it's never linear. It's never like, you know, you feel like you're 10 steps ahead and then you get pulled back, and you know, you feel like you're getting ahead with your kids and the next day they have a meltdown and you see the worst version of yourself and you're just like, okay. Like, I think for me, one of the hardest but most rewarding things that I did, and I'm sure you probably do this as well because I can feel it in your energy, is loving the worst parts of me, like loving myself when I break down in front of my kids, or I see, you know, a shadow side of me or something that I'm not fully proud of. And I think I took it a step from my parenting, because my parents would always yell at me and never explain why. Whereas if I am not an amazing version of myself, I sit with my kids and I'm like, hey guys, mommy's really pissed off today because mommy hasn't looked after herself. Mommy hasn't, you know, gone for a walk. Or I talk about the ways that my cup is empty and why I've reacted like this. And I do apologize. I'm working to be better. So I just have those open lines of communication. So it's not just like mummy's unsafe. It's like, I understand why mummy's is behaving like this. And I don't want, because my mom would always go from calm to crazy in a second, and it would create an environment that was unsafe. But if they understand why, it's like their brains can fill in the gaps and they're like, oh, it's okay. Like, it is safe. Mommy's just empty. And mommy gets angry sometimes when she's empty. So let's all work together as a family, which we should all do anyway, you know, because I think sometimes it's hard when you put all the pressure on yourself to hold the environment together, when at the same time, these little kids are old souls. They've been here many times before. They're not new to the operation. They can help out. Like, I think people forget how capable kids can be. Yes, they have
Yes.
undeveloped brains, but if you keep doing something for your child, they'll expect you to keep doing it. If you say you do the dishes, kids can do the dishes from the age of 3. Like, it's no, they make them do it at preschool. Like, they can do it anywhere. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, really leaning back. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Sorry. When you said that, it made me think of this. So, you know, when you have a new baby, and I don't know if they did this when you had your babies in Australia, but here they would encourage parents, new parents, to talk about every action they did throughout the day to the baby to help them develop their vocabulary, their understanding, right? So now mommy's changing your diaper. Now mommy's gonna put your clothes back on. Now mommy's gonna, all those things. And when you were telling me that explanation of how you're explaining to your kids if you're reacting in a way you don't want to, about the reasoning behind it, I think that's so powerful. And it made me think of that because these are things that don't necessarily come natural to us. I
Mm.
thought it was so awkward to tell my baby all of these things I was doing, right? I'm like, my baby doesn't understand me. They're 2 months old. Why do I sound like a crazy person? But I think if you put that mindset in when you are having these moments and you explain it in a way that even doesn't seem natural for you, but is necessary, like you said, for your kids who are not developed at that level to understand, it'll make more sense and it'll maybe encourage you to do that. So it's encouraged me. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. You know, these like it does take a village, and it does take lots of women to talk about the same thing in different lights and different explanations. And I would never do that if my parents weren't how they were. Like my upbringing was very toxic, and so it terrified me. And because of the personal development journey, I understand how to be a good mom. And I'm not perfect. I'm far from it, but every day I get better. And if I'm not amazing, like I retweak it. And I never, ever, ever shame myself in a million years for being me, because everyone's doing the best they can with what they know. In that moment where you thought you were being your worst, you were doing the best you could with what you know. There wasn't an option better than that for you in that moment, because you were empty, and you can't operate from an empty cup, and everything is showing us how to be better and how to experience life. The grass doesn't yell at the other blades of grass and go, oh, you're ruining the look of the whole plantation, like you're leaving us down. It's just like, how can we be better? How can we support and grow? When one of us wins, we all win, and we all start seeing what's possible. And I think the biggest shift I ever had to make was the shadow work. It was accepting
Mhm.
the darkest parts of me. And there were parts of me that were so dark, like seeing some of the shocking ways that I acted when I was drunk, when I used to drink, and all the things in our cupboard that we're so ashamed of, because we have this identity that's, I'm like this, and when I'm like that, it's not okay. But the most powerful thing I feel you can do as a mum is be okay with the whole. It's loving the whole and just accepting it on every single level, and just going, it's all perfect. As if you're going to have, like, the little humans, they're really just there to test you. They're there every day to test you, and they're going to test you. They're going to bring up everything. They're going to bring up all your shadows. They're going to bring up all your crap. Like, they're there to make you stronger and strengthen you, and help you and teach you and guide you. And when you have that lesson there all the time, it's and changing, as you said earlier, just when you think you've got it right, oh, let's change again. Oh, sorry, mood swings. Oh, wet dreams, like all the things. Oh, periods coming through. Oh, adolescence. And actually, I heard a very, very good psychologist say this, that I found really, really helpful. She said that adolescence is obviously, it's a crazy time, because kids are, they're going from the separation of self, and they're realizing that there is separation, but then they are creating havoc because it's their way to disrupt the nest so that they can leave.
Mm,
And I just thought it was so powerful and so beautiful, because I was like, when
that
we,
is powerful.
yeah, it's so beautiful, because when we can understand that, we don't try to control it. We're not trying to, like, oh my gosh, like, let's try to keep them normal. It's like, you're just there to hold space. You're not the person they look up to during adolescence. All you have to do is be the building that stands there and deals with the cyclone, and stay strong during the cyclone. And I'm not saying every parent's going to have a crazy adolescence, but it's accepting what is, and not trying to hold on to the vision of what we had when they were babies.
Right.
Not trying so hard to be like, oh, but once they hugged me and they didn't want to create disruption and disturbance. It's like, no, like, and I think it's so beautiful, because in the period that our kids go from birth to these adolescent teenagers, we see everything. We see every season on the planet that we've seen on the planet, with the floods, with the cyclones, with the hurricanes, with the ice storms and the blizzards. Like, we see all of it in, 2 decades. And for us to just be a solid, safe place for them to come to no matter what, that's really all it has to come down to. It's like, just be okay with them no matter what. Love them no matter what. Doesn't matter what season they're in, what storm they're playing out. Like, just love them and be the safe place, and don't judge them, because there's nothing to judge. It's just love. Love no matter what. And that's what life is. It's love that person no matter what, even if you've got nothing to do with them. You don't need to have them in your life, but love them no matter what. And I think kids are the biggest teachers of that, because we can sometimes, but we're not just going to kick them out. We're with them for life. You can't just go, oh, sorry, I need a refund. This one's a bit dodgy. It's faulty. Too many bad days. I didn't opt for this.
Reached my limit here.
Yes, yes. But we've got a little bit over time, but it's just been such a pleasure talking to you. I would love to know, if you had a microphone to speak to the over 8 billion people in the entire world, what would be the message that you share with the entire world? And yeah, whatever comes through.
Ooh, what pressure. Okay, let's see. There's a lot I'd want to say, but I think ultimately you can't go wrong just being authentically who you are.
Mm,
Sometimes you're not in a place where you feel you can make that happen, and that can feel daunting. But I want to remind you that showing up authentically is something that you always have the power to do.
mm. I love that. I love that so much. So, so, so beautiful. So, where can everyone find you? And you have a freebie for our listeners as well, which is so exciting. So, yeah, please just share all the
Yes.
places people can get in contact with you and how they can get their hands on that amazing freebie.
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website, which is mamaworkit.com, spelled MAMA. Sign up there. We send a free weekly newsletter. We've got some really great free resources, the podcast, the blog. Connect with me. Let me know what you thought about this episode, what resonated most with you, or if you want to schedule a free breakthrough call with me, I'd love to talk with you. And then, yes, as far as a free gift, I would love to offer you. I do a lot of work, like I said, with productivity and time management strategies, and I really love to include that wellness element. And right now, I have an amazing free gift that I'd love to offer your listeners, your audience, which is a habit accountability resource. Because I don't know about you, Eva, but like, how many times have you gone all in, wanted to start this new habit in your life, and then by day 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, maybe you get a week in, it drops. It drops off the radar because you either are convincing yourself it's not something that you are made for, or you don't have time for, or it just doesn't fit into your life, or whatever the reason that you're telling yourself is. So, this is how I have introduced and included so many amazing habits into my day to day, whether that be exercise or meditation or you name it, ways that I'm caring for myself, ways that I'm showing up for my family, for my business, and the way I also have my clients introduce new habits. So definitely check that out if that's something that you want to introduce into your life.
Oh my God. Love, love, love. And yes, it is so incredibly potent and powerful. And I love that so much because a lot of my work is the energetics, is the mindset. And you do need both. You have to have the strategy. Like my whole calendar is like spider webs. Like it's just like the structure's there, unicorns vomited everywhere, all the color coordinated, but it's all in there because we need structure. And you are so right. We need better habits to create a better life. So I love all of that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time and your beautiful words of wisdom. I know you've helped so many people, and I cannot wait to have you again on the podcast sometime soon. But we'll definitely be supporting one another. And thank you so much for being here. You're such a treasure to this world, and keep doing what you're doing because it's helping so many people.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.